She still remembered that afternoon as if it were yesterday. The scream, the humiliation, the moment that changed her life. One sentence, tell her that she is my wife. It had begun as a shield, a lie meant to, sometimes, life changes not with a storm, but with a single sentence. A few unexpected words that rewrite everything we thought we knew. Emma Johnson never believed her life could hold such moments. She was just an ordinary woman, living quietly in Boston, working as a cleaner in the Grand Mayfair Hotel, a palace of glass and light, where chandeliers hung like captured stars, and every step echoed wealth. She was not one of the guests. She was the invisible shadow behind their comfort, the quiet hands that made the luxury shine. Every morning, she put on her faded gray uniform, tied her hair back, and pushed her cleaning cart through endless corridors, smelling of polished wood and expensive perfume. She had long stopped dreaming of anything beyond her small apartment and her simple life. Until that afternoon, hot, noisy, and ordinary, when everything changed. It began with a scream that tore through the hotel lobby. Emma froze, her mop slipping in her trembling hands. A woman stood by the elevator, tall, elegant, wrapped in silk and diamonds, dark sunglasses hiding eyes that seemed made only for judgment. "How could you let anyone into this hotel?" she shouted, her voice sharp as glass. "This place is for guests, not for people like her." Her gaze fell on Emma. For a moment, Emma couldn't move. Her heart pounded as shame burned up her neck, her cheeks hot and red. Around her, people stopped to watch. The sound of whispers spread through the lobby like smoke. She wanted to speak, to explain that she worked here, that she belonged in this place in her own small way. But her voice died in her throat. She stood still, her eyes down, gripping the mop as if it could protect her from the cruelty of that moment. And then, out of nowhere, the crowd parted. A man's footsteps echoed across the marble floor, calm, steady, commanding. Alexander Rimmers, the owner of the Mayfair Hotel, had arrived. He was known for his quiet authority, his distant charm, and the kind of composure that made people stand straighter in his presence. His suit was dark, his expression unreadable, his very presence enough to silence the room. He stopped beside Emma, looked once at her, then at the furious woman, and said with the calm firmness that carried through every corner of the lobby, "Tell her that she is my wife." The world seemed to stop. A breathless silence filled the air. Guests froze where they stood. The elegant woman's lips parted in shock. Emma could barely breathe. Did he really just say that? His wife? Her mind spun, her chest tight. The woman stammered something inaudible, her arrogance collapsing under the weight of his words, and then she turned and hurried away. The silence that followed was so heavy that Emma could hear her own heartbeat. Alexander's eyes softened for a moment as he looked at her, and said quietly, "I couldn't let anyone humiliate someone who works under my name." Then, just as calmly as he had appeared, he walked away, leaving Emma standing in the center of the grand hall, surrounded by whispers and confusion. By the next morning, the entire hotel knew. The owner of the Mayfair Hotel had called the cleaner his wife. The rumor spread faster than room service. Some staff laughed about it behind their hands. Some were curious. Some even started treating Emma differently. A mixture of awe, jealousy, and gossip. She tried to ignore it, keeping her head down, pretending nothing had happened. But inside, her heart raced with questions she couldn't answer. Why had he said that? Why her? That evening, when her shift ended, a man in a suit approached her. "Mr. Rivers would like to see you in his office." Emma's hands shook as she followed him up to the top floor, a world she had never entered before. His office was wide and filled with light, walls lined with art, the city of Boston glittering through the glass behind him. Alexander sat behind his desk, his sleeves rolled up, a tired look in his eyes. "Miss Johnson," he began gently, "I owe you an explanation." Emma stood still, unsure if she should speak. He sighed, then said, "My mother is sick. She's been unwell for a long time, and yesterday someone told me what happened here. She believes I've finally gotten married." She was happy for the first time in months. His voice softened. "I couldn't tell her the truth. It would break her heart." Emma's brows furrowed as she whispered, "You mean she thinks I'm your wife?" He nodded.
Yes. And I don't want to destroy that illusion. Not yet. So I need your help. I'd like you to pretend. Just for a while. Pretend to be my wife. Emma's eyes widened. The idea was impossible, absurd. She was a cleaner. He was a billionaire. I can't do that, she said quickly. It's not right. But he looked at her then. Not as an employer, not as a rich man, but with a kind of quiet sincerity that melted her hesitation. Please, he said softly. I'll take care of everything. You'll be compensated. I just need you to meet her, to make her happy for a little longer. And so, with a trembling heart, Emma agreed. The next week, Emma met Alexander's mother, a kind, fragile woman with soft silver hair and eyes full of warmth.
So you're Emma, she said, smiling as she took her hand. I always knew my son would find someone gentle. The lie hung heavy in the room, but Emma smiled anyway, unable to crush the hope in that old woman's face. Alexander played his part perfectly, offering tea, holding Emma's hand, laughing at small things, creating a picture of love so convincing it almost felt real. But when they were alone, the silence between them was awkward, almost unbearable. Two strangers pretending to share a life neither of them understood. Days passed. Weeks followed. Pretending became a routine. They dined together, visited his mother every evening, attended a few charity events as a couple. Emma had to learn how to walk in heels, how to smile in photographs, how to exist in a world that had never been meant for her. And Alexander, the man who once seemed made of stone, began to soften. He showed her how to waltz in the quiet of the drawing room, and she kept stepping on his shoes until they both started laughing. They talked sometimes late at night when the rest of the world slept, about books, about childhood, about dreams they had long given up. Slowly, the line between pretending and reality began to fade. Emma started seeing him differently. Not as the cold hotel owner who'd saved her from humiliation, but as a man, thoughtful, lonely, kind beneath the surface. She noticed how he always paused before speaking, how he never raised his voice, how his smile, rare and fleeting, made something inside her ache. And Alexander found himself drawn to her too, to the quiet strength behind her shyness, to the way she looked at the world as if she still believed in its goodness. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted his money or his name. Emma wanted nothing but honesty. It unsettled him, and it changed him. But life, as always, does not stay still. Alexander's mother grew weaker. One winter morning, she called Emma to her bedside, her voice faint but clear. "My dear, I know." Emma froze. "You know?" The old woman smiled. "That this marriage isn't real. But I can see something that is. I can see love." Emma felt tears fill her eyes as the woman pressed her hand. "Take care of my son. He hides too much behind silence." That was the last thing she said before she slipped away. The days that followed were heavy with grief. The house that had once been filled with warmth was now filled with quiet. Emma stayed by Alexander's side through the funeral, through the condolences, through the emptiness that followed. And when it was all over, when everyone else had left, he turned to her in the dim evening light and said softly, "You don't have to stay anymore. The act is over. You're free." Emma looked at him, her chest tightening. "Is that what you want?" He hesitated, then whispered, "It's what's fair." She nodded even though her heart cracked quietly. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Emma," he said, "my mother knew the truth." She turned back, eyes wide. "Then why didn't she say anything?" He smiled faintly, pain flickering behind it. "Because she saw something between us, something real." Silence filled the space between them. The city lights outside flickered against the window, and for the first time since they'd met, There were no lies left between them, only truth. Fragile and frightening. That day, he said, stepping closer, in the lobby, when I said you were my wife, I said it to protect you. His voice trembled, barely above a whisper. But now, I say it because it's true. Emma's breath caught. The words hung in the air like the echo of that first day, the same phrase that had started everything. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, all the pretending, all the walls, all the fear melted away. Sometimes love doesn't arrive like a fairy tale. Sometimes it begins as a lie told in kindness and becomes the truest thing you ever known. Emma smiled through her tears, and Alexander reached out, taking her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. The city moved around them, but for the two of them, time had stopped. They stood in quiet understanding. No promises, no grand declarations, just truth, real and simple. Months passed. The Mayfair Hotel stood tall as ever, its marble floors gleaming beneath the light of crystal chandeliers. But something inside it had changed. The air was lighter. The staff smiled more. And sometimes guests would notice the owner walking through the lobby hand in hand with a woman they didn't recognize. Her smile warm, her eyes kind, her steps confident. The same woman who once stood there with a mop in her trembling hands. Emma Rivers now. Not by title, but by love. She still remembered that afternoon as if it were yesterday. The scream, the humiliation, the moment that changed her life. One sentence. Tell her that she is my wife. It had begun as a shield, a lie meant to protect her, but it ended as the truth that defined her. She often thought about how strange fate could be, how one moment of courage, one act of kindness, could rewrite a lifetime of silence. And as the evening lights of Boston glittered across the windows of the Mayfair, she whispered to herself, almost smiling, sometimes one random phrase can change your whole life.